You're watching 1HEART Live. I hope you're enjoying the show so far. Our special guests in the hot seat this week are Margaret Casely-Hayford, Nathaniel Peat and David Roberts. And this week we are focused on business and entrepreneurs. Now, we were talking before the break about men, women, the differences, and actually some of the challenges that a lot of men are facing now in reaching the top. But in fact, David posed a very interesting thought. He planted a seed in my mind, which led me to ask the question, do you think men are more ambitious than women? What do you think?
I think traditionally in the Caribbean, men, or boys for that matter, have been in many ways groomed by their dads, you know, to be taking up certain traditional professions. So the doctors and the lawyers and that sort of thing, it would be, you know, commonplace for a dad to sort of put in the presence of his son's mind. But things have changed a bit from when I was growing up in the 70s, 70s and 80s, that is, in the Caribbean, where now mothers are now taking that role. You know,
have you heard of the term momtrepreneurs? That's a new one as well. So a lot of mothers, you know, juggling their lives with starting their own business. I mean, Nathaniel, you started your own business as well. How does that add flexibility to your life? I mean, how's that changed for you?
In terms of business?
Your lifestyle.
Lifestyle. I mean, entrepreneurship is a lifestyle. It's not a change to a lifestyle. Entrepreneurship is a lifestyle. So being an entrepreneur is part of who you are as a person. It's not like a job. Like, you know, you path your future basically with everything you do. But back to, you know, the thought about women. I think women bring a different type of balance to the equation. And I think it's necessary, in fact, for women to be equally positioned with the men, especially in business. My business partner for Genix is actually a woman, and we're an international company now. We're in Africa and the Caribbean, and I think a lot of the strengths are, you know, that the man has, the woman doesn't have. I think many of the strengths that the woman has, the man doesn't have, and I think that they complement each other.
For example,
you know, very well.
What are some of these that you would give us as an example? You know, the strengths that men have that perhaps women don't, and vice versa? Well,
one thing is maybe listening. Okay. So, you know, so the thing is that, you know, that's a big one in
who are we referring to, men or women? I don't know how to react.
One thing is listening. You find that women are very good listeners, and they can bond very well. They can listen. They can empathise quite quickly. Whereas, you know, a man might have an approach that's a little bit more kind of tough and hard, and I think that complements in business. You know, when you're talking about maybe an employee that's maybe done something wrong, and the boss is really going to be very hard on that employee, you might have a bit of balance which is brought in from a female boss, which then says, actually, no, we need to actually empathise with their situation a little bit. Let's look at this from a different perspective. I think it's very important that we have that relationship that kind of marries you together, almost, you know, in the same way that a family is actually, you know, unified with a husband and a wife and the children. In the same way, I think that there's great value which is brought there. But, you know, a lot of men are actually put off by the success of some of their women, which I think is their downfall. Okay. Because they don't see it as a point of actually saying, do you know what, that's a Caribbean woman that's empowered, and therefore I'm going to try to be with her. They see it like this, and for some that can't complement, they actually it works as a disadvantage to them in that they become intimidated, and then they do things in opposition. And I think that's where some more thought needs to be thought about.
You're agreeing. What are your thoughts?
No, I think Nathaniel is right on the money. There is a sense that women, I mean, I hope no one takes this wrong, but there is still this sense that women ought to be wearing aprons and slippers. In some quarters in the Caribbean.
Very old school mentality.
Very old school. And I am obviously against that train of thought. But, you know, some men in business, they think that women ought to be seen and not heard. Even if their partner, for some reason, excels either at studies or in business, they don't recognize it in the way that they should. And that is a problem. Obviously, that will cause tension within the home. I shudder to think how that works in the business environment. If a man is married to a woman who excels beyond his capability, and they have to work together. So, you know, it would be quite interesting to see how that pans out. But there's still lots of different attitudes towards women.
So whose responsibility is that to change those attitudes? Is it men themselves? Margaret, give me your take on this. You look like you want to jump in.
Yeah, because I'm quite sad what I hear, because I'd hoped that things had moved on.
Yeah, it's a very, very old mentality.
It really is, because both sexes are equally ambitious, and perhaps ambitious for different things and in different ways, but are equally ambitious. And what makes a strong move forward for a community is for both sexes to feel suitably empowered, to get the best out of themselves. And so what I've heard makes me feel incredibly sad. And one of the things I think is really important is to remember that in our early years, it is very often the women, because of this traditional way of looking at things, that nurture us and give us the code of conduct for the future. And if that's the case, I think it behoves all of the women to start to make sure that young men growing up recognise that they are dealing with somebody who is an equal, and that they're dealing with somebody who has equal strengths, perhaps in different things, as you rightly say, and that they're dealing with somebody who actually could technically be their boss at some point. And so, you know, perhaps it is for women actually to try to create a different environment in which men and boys are growing up, and for all of us to create a different code of conduct. And I think the other thing about having a code of conduct is that we also have to think about the fact that very often boys give up, and they give up if they don't feel that there's someone helping to push them forward and who has enough belief in them. And I think that, again, it behoves us as parents, whether you're male or female, to give your children self-belief. And again, I mean, whilst we're sort of generalising horribly, I think that you can see very often in very matriarchal societies like Italian and Jewish societies that they will actually encourage the children through a real self-belief. And
really push them along their way. Yeah, absolutely.
And give them the strength. And that never goes. Once you've instilled that in a young person, it never goes.
Stays with
it's
them.
incredibly valuable. And so I think it really is something that we need to build for the future.
No, absolutely. I think the importance, as you've all touched on, is understanding each other a lot more, you know, men and women. And actually, it's funny, but you tend to find that starting off as entrepreneurs, men go in starting off with a lot more confidence, which comes from their inner, you know, a lot more pride and a lot more determination. And at that stage, they could actually be described as more ambitious. However, once the woman sees the vehicle moving and the business actually growing and prospering, she tends to go in at full force. So actually, you do find that they're equally ambitious. It just depends on their natural characteristics. So we're going to be coming back to some of these heated topics a bit later. But for now, we're going to be moving straight on to our next power profile. It's Wilfred Emmanuel Jones.
Wilfred Emmanuel Jones claims to be the UK's only black farmer.
I'm the black farmer, darling.
Wilfred Emmanuel Jones is a British businessman, farmer, and the founder of a food range of products called The Black Farmer. Wilfred was born in Clarendon, Jamaica. His family moved to England in the 1950s, settling in a small heath in Birmingham. The eldest of 9 children, living in a 2 up and 2 down, Wilfred grew up in these modest conditions. After leaving school without any qualifications, Wilfred, in his own words, talked his way into TV, eventually becoming a producer-director for the BBC. Combining his passion for food and TV, he is credited for bringing household names such as Gordon Ramsay, Anthony Warren-Thompson, Brian Turner, and James Martin to our screens. Wilfred left the BBC after 15 years to pursue his lifelong dream to buy a small farm in Devon, where he was inspired to create his now established food range, The Black Farmer, whose products include award-winning sausages, chicken, ham, and sauces.
All right, this is a bit like actually smashing champagne onto those boats when they're launching. So this is the first run of the Black Farmer sausages. Here we go.
He has since become involved in setting up the Black Farmer Scholarship, which aims to help and encourage ethnic minorities to work in the rural community, an area where to date they have been underrepresented. The initiative has been turned into a Channel 4 TV series called The Young Black Farmers, which sees Wilfred with a group of young 9 inner-city school leavers from ethnic minorities on his farm.
I want people who are passionate and who really sees this as a big opportunity and they're prepared to fight for it.
Wilfred also set up a marketing agency, Comes Plus, specialising in food brands including Lloyd Grossman, Kettle Chips and Plymouth Gin.
So that was the incredible Wilfred Emmanuel Jones, also known as the Black Farmer, who's really come a long way with no education. Again, a brilliant example of someone of Caribbean heritage who's really taken his baton and flown with it. So we're looking forward to hearing more from you. Keep us informed with your tweets on social media, your Instagram. Give us a call. We'll catch up with you and join in more heated discussions after the break.
The religion Rastafari has been growing in popularity due to its beliefs and culture. I wanted to investigate and have a sneak peek into the lifestyle of some of Jamaican's Rastafarians. Which brings me to Montego Bay's Rastafari Indigenous Village.